Hey everyone. So, this week on the podcast, we want to talk about tips for raising veggie loving kids.
Yeah, in my many years of clinical practice, probably the one food group that parents told me that their kids struggled to enjoy the most was vegetables. A lot of kids are okay with fruit, but not so great with veggies. I think it's really important for families to work on improving this, as there are definitely a lot of really essential protective nutrients that are found in vegetables and nowhere else. And our
Yes.
bodies need these nutrients to thrive. So, many of these important, they're called phytonutrients or plant nutrients, are just not found in any other food group, like not even fruit.
Yeah.
So that's why I think the primary reason why I think it's really important to persist with raising veggie loving kids. They don't need to love all vegetables, but I think a fairly decent variety is a good idea.
I reckon too.
Look, my kids on the whole love vegetables. I don't believe I'm just lucky that this is the case.
Yeah.
I've worked very, very hard because they haven't always loved vegetables.
Yeah.
In fact, they pushed back on many vegetables. But, just like I persisted when they were little with teaching them to toilet train and to read and to write and to use manners and do all of those things, I have also persisted very much so with teaching them to genuinely enjoy eating a good variety of veggies. And, look, as I said, there are many vegetables that they didn't eat when they were little that they now eat that they're older. There are vegetables that they ate when they were little that they now refuse to eat. So, unless you are actually continually exposing your kids to these veggies and, as I said, as long as you don't give up on your kids learning to love to enjoy vegetables, one day there's a very good chance that they'll actually come around to veggies that they really don't like now. So, today I just wanted to share the things that I found really useful for raising my own kids. And also these are tips that I've used, with patients who had kids that were particularly veggie fussy and perhaps also had some health complaints that had developed as a result of them not wanting to eat vegetables. So my first tip, and we talk about this a lot, is just education. It's so important, isn't it?
It's empowering.
It is. And our kids, aren't just born knowing about vegetables. So we need to talk to our kids about veggies. I really believe that the more kids have an understanding of something and exactly what it is, how it tastes, where it's from, the more likely and the more open they're going to be to at least trying.
Yeah, well, they're less resistant.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
when you educate them, you're kind of giving them more choice, giving them more empowerment because they understand and know what the veggie is, and why you want them to eat it. That it can taste differently depending on how you cook it.
Yes, definitely. And even just outside of the dinner table, my kids, we've always played games that have kind of involved vegetables. Like I can remember we always had quite a long drive home after school. So we would, sometimes I would say, okay, let's play, is it a fruit or a vegetable? When they're really little, then we would kind of, as they got older, we advanced to where it's growing. Is it, growing on a tree or a vine or underground or in a bush? And, if we didn't know, thank goodness for Google. But the education doesn't have to just be at the dinner table, although that is also a great place to discuss how something tastes, what would make it taste better. Do they like the vegetables plain, or do they like them with salt, or would they like a dipping sauce, or discussions, open discussions around vegetables and discussing flavors. And if they don't like something, ask them what it is that they don't like about it.
And knowing that you're having these conversations and you're educating your kids all the time. And you might be talking to them about it and they still might not eat it.
No.
And then 6 months later, something changes. So don't give up. And it's not you're ramming something down their throat.
No.
You're just kind of explaining, like, so for me with my son who wants protein all the time, it's like, mate, I know you want to fill up on protein, but you still need your leafy greens. To help your liver and to help your body kind of process all the protein. So it's kind of I'll just say that.
Yeah, and leave
then,
it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and
detach
then down the
almost.
track, you'll hear someone else say it as well.
Yeah.
But it's kind of planting those seeds like we've
Yes.
spoken about before.
Yeah.
And that it is our kind of job as a parent to educate our kids.
Just explain that concept of planting seeds for someone who's listening for the first time.
Yeah. So for me, I think of, with my kids, I'm always planting seeds. So sometimes, and knowing that, it takes time for things to germinate. And I think of that with knowledge with kids. So with my kids, I don't want to shove my way down their throat, because what I find is people actually become more resistant and less likely to do the thing that's good for them. Some kids even will do the absolute opposite. Just to kind of have some sense of agency and control. So I never wanted to set up that power dynamic with my kids where they had to fight for agency and control. So I'm kind of saying, all right, this is why we're eating broccoli, because it's really good for your body. It's kind of got a lot of phytonutrients that our body needs to get rid of.
To detoxify.
And
obviously you go into the amount of detail that's age appropriate. You're talking to a teenager there when you're talking as you are.
Exactly. But again, like I'm saying a little bit about the broccoli and then I'm leaving it. And so I'm planting that seed of, the broccoli is not just a thing. It's not just, there's a reason for it. And I'm kind of, it's education, if you think of yourself, it happens in layers. And so the first time you hear the word broccoli, you might not know what it is, but then as parents, we're offering more and more layers related to broccoli. And so for me, planting that seed is kind of helping just putting something in my kid's head that hopefully will grow over time. And I water that with more information about why we have more veggies or
you might repeat that message
in different
many times in different ways. Exactly.
Over years.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And that's kind of to help that seed germinate. And it's adding to what's in my kid's mind. Like I'm modeling it, but I'm educating them about it too, because when we're kids, we are like sponges. We take in everything from our environment. So we take in the messages from mum and dad. We take in how mum and dad approach veggies. And so these all the things we do and say are like little seeds. And then we want our kids to germinate and to grow the seeds that are good for them. And lead to them having a healthier life.
Which, I mean, I know that's if you can even take that literally, in that growing food with your kids is one way as well of educating. Just leading on from that is one way of educating your kids about food and where it comes from and how it becomes, grows from a plant perhaps, and then a flower appears, and then the bees germinated, and then all of a sudden a tomato appears.
So powerful growing food with your kids.
If it's possible, exactly. And I know for a lot of us that's actually not possible.
Even just like a little pot of parsley or
something small.
Just
sprouts are good as well.
The satisfaction, the contribution, it's popping its little head out of the ground.
That is definitely one way to educate your kids. But like if you can't grow food, then even when you're shopping for food, it's important to get them to help. Ask them, can you put, choose the best carrots you can find and put them in the bag, and making, these contributions really positive and exciting for them. Go and pick me the biggest broccoli. Give them fairly good examples. A friend of mine lets her kids pick one new vegetable each week from the farmer's market, and then they set her like a challenge. Like sometimes she'll phone me and she's like, "Oh my God, this week they picked, something really obscure." In Queensland, we can get some very obscure things pop up at the market. And, they'll be like, what do I even do with this thing? And, I'll either give them some flavour combinations, or if I don't know myself, I start Googling. That's, and the kids think it's hilarious that when she does panic over something that they've picked, but that's all part of that, just engaging with food. They might not even eat what she's cooked.
And the education around it. And that this is a life skill. Like we forget, going to the shops and knowing what to buy is a life skill.
Yeah.
And if you don't go with your parents to see how to do it and how many carrots do you get and what is like a kind of a healthy, balanced shop, if you don't go with them, you don't learn it. So it's kind of I feel like we've forgotten that in our day and age, that all these tiny little things that our culture's made inconvenient actually helps you have a more full, healthy life.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
And
really
even
important skills.
with those carrots that your kids have picked, then, you know, you put them in a salad or you put them in a curry, and you can pass comment, oh, this is one of the carrots you picked at the shops. So again, they've got that sense of agency and that sense of involvement in the dish that you've prepared, and all of those things add up to them being much, much more likely to choose. I always to choose like to eat that vegetable. I always when my kids were little, we were lucky enough to have a farmer's market that we shopped at. And my kids still, when they're like on a Saturday morning, if they've got nothing better to do, that is. But if, I'm off to the farmer's market, and quite often my daughter or my son will go, oh, I'm going to come with you, because they actually, and my daughter actually said to me the other day, I just love the environment.
Yeah, me too.
And she's like, oh, even when I look at,
there.
She's like, even when I look at the kids at the farmer's market, there's like, they're totally different kinds of kids, they're farmer's market kids. And she's like, they're different to other kids that you see around. And she has obviously a lot of fond memories from going to the market. It wasn't a drag. So I'm really grateful that we did have that available to us when actually I used to make a joke that I chose where we lived because it had a good farmer's market. That was basically the whole reason that we lived where we lived. Obviously, another thing, part of that education process is actually getting your kids to help prepare them. There are so many vegetables that my kids will never consider worthy of eating until they actually prepared them themselves. Leafy greens like rocket and spinach were definitely my biggest veggie hurdle. When my son was little, he used to push anything that was green and leafy off his plate. And sometimes when he was really little, he'd actually say, I don't like flowers. And we'd actually say, they're not flowers, they're leaves, but okay, that's fine. And then one day when he was little, and you know how boys have that fascination with things that move and spin and wheels that turn and stuff like that, he saw me spinning the salad in the salad spinner, like I was washing the greens. And I saw he was kind of interested in what I was doing. So I said, you come up and pull the cord. And, and he watched it whiz around. And then the next time I made a salad, I said to him, or that night when I made a salad with dinner, I said to him, oh, this is the salad that you helped me make. And all of a sudden, for the first time, he actually ate a leaf. I couldn't believe it. And then on the converse, funnily enough, much later on, he loved leafy greens from that point onwards. It was like a light switched. It was incredible, actually. Much later on.
Approaching things from different angles.
Totally. Absolutely.
Like not just at the dinner table.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's part of the education process is it's broad.
Yes.
It's very, very broad. And like you have said, it's about planting those small seeds and just persisting. But funnily enough, when he was a lot older, he went on a school camp, like even a teenager, he went on a school camp and he served himself up salad and the leaves were slimy. Like slimy spinach, but it was actually spinach was in the salad, and it was very, very slimy. And from that point onwards, he has this thing about slimy greens, like if there's even a tinge of something not being quite fresh enough, and he really doesn't like spinach. It's crazy. Like I can cook it, and look, if it's served up, he mostly will eat it, but not a fan of spinach. So it's like that bad experience. And I can remember that. I can remember vomiting after eating grapefruit, and that was one of my most favourite fruits. And from that point onwards, I never touched grapefruit for about 6 or 7 years.
It's funny. You know what? You make a great point about Jess, like that he's not a massive fan of spinach, but he'll eat it.
Yes.
I think this is a really important thing, to kind of that we're not going to – not everything on our plate is, oh, my God, this is amazing and I love this. But it's okay to still eat it. You know, when it's good, healthy food. And to build that.
I always make sure it's flavoursome though. Like there's always a great dressing on the spinach. And I think that that's also important with vegetables, is making sure that there is heaps and heaps of flavour. You know I personally wouldn't like to eat just like a plain spinach on a plate or plain piece of steamed broccoli. Like I want a fat or an oil and salt and pepper or a dressing or some sort of flavour tossed through the vegetable can make such a difference.
It can.
Yeah.
For me, it's more building that resilience.
Yes.
To be able to eat what's on your plate.
Yes.
You know, like and kind of know that it's foods to nourish us as well as the flavour, and just I guess I'm just trying to say just that that resilience and that oh well, I don't so much like spinach, but I love the steak that's with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're not saying at all that you should be forcing your kids. I've never forced my kids to eat anything. I give them the food and then they choose what they want to eat from their plate. And look, loving eating veggies yourself, like we originally said, modelling the behaviour that you want. Our kids, don't always do what we say, but they often will do what we do. So
powerful.
Little kids particularly are much more likely to follow your example. You can talk until you're blue in the face about how delicious a vegetable is, but unless you're actually eating it yourself, you're not going to ever get your kids on board with that. So, if they do reject a vegetable, definitely don't get upset. I often would offer other members of the family the vegetable, either myself or my husband or for Jesse's older sister would be like, oh, I'll have that if you're not eating it. And, sometimes I would even say, oh gosh, you don't like this. So you don't know what you're missing out on. This is delicious. Or I love one of the things that you say is, it's okay. I never used to like this when I was younger, but now that I'm growing up, I love it because I know my kids always wanted to be more growing up than what they were.
And I think that's important too. Like we talked about planting seeds, but letting kids know there's a progression.
Yes.
You might not like it today. Doesn't mean you're always going to not like it. Keep trying it. Taste buds change, you change. It's like not making a big deal, but keeping the kind of long game in mind.
Yes, absolutely. And another little tip I think is serving veggies buffet style is also important because, again, that just gives them an opportunity to have some autonomy on what they do and don't want. And, I always will include, like whenever I made a salad when my kids were little and say my son wasn't eating leafy greens, I'd always make sure there were other vegetables in the salad that I knew, or other ingredients in the salad that I knew he loved. So he loved olives, he loved carrot. There were other things he liked. He liked raw broccoli. So they would be in the salad. So when I served it up, he would just pick through and eat the parts that he'd like, and he wouldn't, as I said, touch the leafy greens. But I just continued.
And I
think thousands of times to put salad on his plate, or to have it on a platter in a buffet, kind of choose your own. It was always presented and up to him whether he ate it or not.
That's the piece. Thousands of times.
Thousands.
And autonomy. Like autonomy and them getting to choose and them getting to think for themselves and them and that modelling. That's when they do really broaden their palate and do start to kind of, all right, I'll try it. If there's no big deal around it, all right, I'll try it. Oh, it's not so bad. And then it just becomes less and less of a big deal and they start eating more.
And I also find, like, I've also tried and make a kind of mental note, okay, my kids didn't like something cooked, so maybe next time I'll offer it raw, or they didn't like it steamed, so I'll try roasting it next time and see if that's they like it more that way. So I'm not catering to them, but I'm just actually finding ways, like we all have preferences, You know, my kids, when they were little anyway, didn't like pumpkin, like baked pumpkin, you know, say as part of a roast dinner.
Yeah.
But they would happily eat it in like a soup or in a lasagna or something like that.
And I think that's important because we can get rigid in our thinking, hey? And when you're like, well, pumpkin, but there's hundreds of different ways you can
cook it.
And
prepare it and
so
enjoy
you might not like it like this, but you haven't tried it like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, patience, persistence is just so important. Never give up. Never give up.
And remembering all of this stuff, like them helping you, them going to the shops with you, them being curious about food, you having conversations. It's not just their physical well-being, it's their mental well-being.
Yeah.
So kids that are involved with their families, their mental health is a lot more robust than when we don't kind of engage them and educate them and kind of set them up for life, really.
Yeah. Because the education piece, like you just have said, it's a bonding experience. It's actually not just about the food.
No.
It's about the relationship as well.
And skill building. You know, like, and we just don't get that enough. Like how do you learn to cook if you don't see it? How do you learn what foods are good and what foods aren't if you don't talk about it?
Yeah,
all
absolutely.
these basic skills.
We have a whole unit on, you know, education in the Well Nourished Kids program, which is our signature program where we really hold your hand and support you to raise really resilient, food-loving kids. It's something we're both extremely passionate about. And there's details about it in the show notes. Probably the most valuable part of the program is that we actually do Q&A sessions. So you actually get our personalised support as you make your way through the program. And that's something we were really passionate about including in the program, because sometimes, you know, you can do a program, but unless you can get that personalised level of support, it sometimes can make it difficult.